Cooper Kupp are both primed to have huge days against the Seahawks this weekend. At least Vinnie thinks so. Reveal and debate our Week 9 wide receiver and tight end rankings on today's episode of Locked On Fantasy Football.
You are Locked On Fantasy, your daily NFL fantasy podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into the Locked On Fantasy Football Podcast. Everydayers, thank you for making us your first listen every single weekday. We're here to help you win your fantasy championships. I am one of your co-hosts, Michelle Magdziuk, and when I'm not doing this, I'm a researcher and fantasy analyst with NFL Network.
I'm your other co-host, Vinnie Iyer. When I'm not doing this, I'm writing about NFL fantasy and betting for sportingnews.com. Make sure you like and subscribe to this podcast if you're watching on YouTube or listening wherever you get your podcasts.
This episode is brought to you by Prize Picks. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNFL and use code all lowercase LockedOnNFL to win $50 instantly when you play $5. We are ready to reveal our wide receiver and tight end rankings for Week 9. We already discussed and debated some of our running back and quarterback rankings on yesterday's show. If you missed that, go listen to it after this one. But let's just start right at the top of our wide receivers here. A very similar top ranking, 6 of the same top 7. Justin Jefferson, CeeDee Lamb, Jamar Chase, AJ Brown, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Malik Nabers. The one place that we differ, we both also have Puka Nacua top here. I have him 6, you have him 8, but you have Cooper Kupp even ahead of Puka at number 7. I also like Cooper a good amount this week at tight end or at wide receiver 13, but you really love him at 7. Why are you so high on him this week against the Seahawks, Vinny?
Yeah, I said you want to be attached to this game as much as possible, whether you're playing seasonal or DFS. The Rams and Seahawks are going to go after it. There's a lot on the line in this game. And then you look at the Seahawks secondary, they had some pieces, but they really struggled last week against Buffalo at home. I mean, they could not stop Keon Coleman. Khalil Shakir had the 100-yard game. So they're really starting to reel here, especially on the outside. They just don't look all that great. So I think Cooper Kupp will be schemed open often. Puka Nacua had the big game last week against the Vikings. So I think this is a Kupp game. He'll go off. They'll put him in a lot of places. He should be a lot healthier than he was last time. I think Nacua is actually ahead of him with the health. They played Kupp, and you could tell they were managing his snaps a little bit, especially in the red zone and not giving him a lot of looks, but he still found the end zone in that game against the Vikings. So I think they'll unlock him more like we're used to with Matthew Stafford. Having that mini bye is going to be really great for both of these receivers. So I expect all the receivers to go off. I mean, the only question mark I have is Kyren Williams, right? Will he steal the show? But I think this is going to be a high-scoring enough game back and forth where the Rams will need to be passing into the fourth quarter.
Yeah, I mean, we really liked Matthew Stafford this week, right? So it makes sense. We like both of his top wide receivers. I don't expect any of the other pass catchers to have a big game for the Rams, right? Like I expect most of these targets to go to Kupp and Nacua. And as long as Kyren Williams doesn't steal all the touchdowns, both of them and Stafford should have a really good game. We both throw in Tyreek Hill back into there. I do have him a little bit higher at wide receiver 8. You have him at 14. It's a tough matchup. But he did, the offense looked better with Tua back there. So you're just going to keep playing him. Another guy we both love this week is DeVonta Smith. You have him as your wide receiver 9. I have him at 10 against the Jaguars. Just such a great matchup. And he's really been pretty solid all year long besides that week 7 performance where he had -2 yards. But he came back to life last week.
Yeah, and you look at this, the downfield connection, he's been feeling it with Jalen Hurts. They're just locked in on these long passes for touchdowns that's happened in multiple weeks of late. So they're just on the same page. And the same thing with the Rams, right? There's not usually a third person involved all that much. Dallas Goedert maybe could return. I think Grant Calcaterra, if you're in a really deep league, will be involved at tight end a little bit, but it's still going to be all about these wide receivers against the Jaguars corners. I mean, that's where every team has attacked them. Every team has had success with all their wide receivers here that they've chosen to throw to. And we know the Eagles always look at Brown and Smith. They get them their targets every week. When they're both on the field together, they interchangeably get open. So I'm looking for a big game there. The question is, again, do they turn this over to Saquon Barkley at some point? I still think the Jags are good enough. That's My one concern down of some wide receivers, will they compete? But again, the Eagles are just compiling points in the second half. They were pouring it on the Bengals. I mean, they didn't have to do that, but they just kept pulling away. So they're a bit of a relentless offense with Kellen Moore, and I like that.
Yeah, I think we both have AJ Brown ranked super high. I have him 2, you have him 4. Like
Yeah.
I would have put him 1, but Justin Jefferson's facing the Colts, so it's like it's kind of hard. But yeah, we
Yeah.
expect both Brown and DeVonta to have great games this week. Now, a different teammate duo that all over the place in this offense with the Jets. They play tonight on Thursday. We have them ranked similarly, I'll say. We both have Garrett Wilson ranked ahead of Davante Adams. So I have Wilson at wide receiver 12, you have him at wide receiver 11. I have Adams at wide receiver 24, you have him at wide receiver 16. I mean, I guess we're trusting Wilson more, but like, will Davante Adams have more production and now in his 3rd game with Aaron Rodgers tonight?
Yeah, my concern he's not playing all that well. I mean, Garrett Wilson is still Garrett Wilson. He's getting open. He has a really good matchup against the corners of the Texans, who are Kamari Lassiter and Derek Stingley Jr. And then the inside, you have Jalen Petre, that you can also beat in a lot of situations. They do give up quite a bit of points to the wide receivers. Now, my question is not about the matchup, but when is this Rodgers Adams thing going to get going? I mean, it's been 2 weeks now. It was a favorable matchup last week. I don't know. Like, I don't know what you're going to get. Are they going to be loose now that they're probably out of the playoff race? Are they feeling it more because they might win the game because it's a spread in their favor in this one? I don't know. Like, and there's already rumors of Adams being traded again from the Jets to another team. So I don't know. Adams maybe just wanted out of Las Vegas, but maybe he wasn't really motivated to go to the Jets either, and he just wanted to be out of the Raiders. So I don't know. He has to start showing something, or I think he goes straight to the bench and just don't think of him as old Davante Adams anymore.
That would be crazy if he got traded that quickly. Yeah, I think he just needs to come down with a touchdown, right? I think his
Yeah.
performances are going to come down to touchdown or bust. Could he score one in this game? Absolutely. The Texans are allowing the 8th most points per game to wide receivers this year, and it's really because of the touchdowns they're allowing. It's not like they're like the worst defense, but they are giving up those touchdowns to, especially to the wide receiver position. So I like Garrett Wilson to get the volume tonight. And I think Adams could come down with one. That's why I still have him ranked as a wide receiver 2, low end wide receiver 2. But yeah, I guess you're plugging both into your lineups tonight and just living with it. But one guy, I don't know. I don't know if I can get on board. It's Jayden Reed. You have him as your wide receiver 12. You can't quit him, right? And it's been a long time since he's put up a huge game. But the last 2 weeks, wide receiver 78, wide receiver 56. The 2 weeks prior to that, wide receiver 25, wide receiver 25. So that's why I have him ranked. I have him ranked as a wide receiver 25 because it's a good matchup against the Lions. But I can't rank him higher than that.
Yeah, why have Jayden Reed bumped up here is actually the potential of Jordan Love missing the game. Jordan Love has been kind of locked into Romeo Doubs and Tucker Kraft in recent weeks, and that's kind of hurt Jayden Reed. But we know he was involved in a lot of ways when Malik Willis was the starting quarterback, and I would think it's iffy right now to play Jordan Love. I know it's a division game, it's big, but Malik Willis also gives them some confidence because they're able to win some games with a different style of offense with Josh Jacobs and doing things that way. So I think if there was any question with Love, they'd be a little bit careful for the longer haul. I know this is a big division game, but you're not going to win a lot if he aggravates and has to miss extra games, right? So Willis has been good. And I think, again, Reed is a bigger deal because of that. Because, again, they'll get involved in the running game. That was a key source of his points early in the season. Let's not forget that. They were giving him some touches to just get the ball in his hands a la Deebo Samuel. And we haven't seen that of late, as they've been just wanting to throw the ball downfield all the time. So, again, this is a game, it's kind of weird. Like, he does better when things might be more difficult for their passing game.
I do think Jordan Love will play. He's back at practice. I think he's going to just force himself to play. And I do think that's better for Jayden Reed. I really do. I mean, I know he was involved with Malik Willis, but he finished as the wide receiver 48 and 41 in the 2 games that Malik Willis played because they just run so much. So I do think it's better if Jordan Love plays, but Jayden Reed's just not being utilized. It's 3 targets, 4 targets, 6. Even in his big games, it's not like he saw a ton of targets. He's very reliant on the big play. That's why I have him a bit lower. Now, Marvin Harrison Jr., I jinxed him last week, right? The opposite jinx. I had him super low, and we were hoping that worked, right, to get him going. And it did. He had 111 yards and a receiving touchdown. First game he'd done anything since like week 4. But are you trusting him in this tough matchup against the Bears this week? We do both have him as a top 20 option.
Yeah, it is a tough matchup, especially he's going to see a lot of Jalen Johnson. You figure this game, I mean, Terry Stevenson had the major lapse last week, so he's kind of maybe messed in the head a little bit. And then you also have Kyler Gordon, who missed last week, and I think that was an underrated storyline there in the middle of the field. So I think there are ways to get Harrison open. I think you have to work him into the slot. I think they figured out a way to unlock him a little bit more last week. So, yeah, the matchup is tough, but you're still playing him. And you feel a lot more confident than you did just a week ago because you figure, oh, the Cardinals actually know how to use this guy now, and that's good. And it wasn't just a touchdown base. They were scheming him open all over the field. So I have a lot more confidence now, at least in Marvin Harrison Jr. as a wide receiver 2 weekly play.
Now, Zay Flowers has a new teammate, and that's not what I'm worried about. But I am getting a bit worried about this matchup. So we're going to dig into the rest of our wide receiver rankings, including where we have Zay Flowers, right after we take a quick break. Our friends over at 5 Hour Energy know that being a passionate football fan isn't just a hobby, it's a way of life. It takes a lot of energy to power through all-day tailgates, touchdown celebrations, or an agonizing second overtime, which is why they've created the Stan the Fan 5 Hour Energy Shot with a special flavor called Fan Fuel. The energy shot made just for super fans like you, the fans who are first to the parking lot and who are last to leave. We see you. You know what else gave me a bit of fantasy fan fuel this weekend? That moment where Jaden Daniels completed like a 60-yard Hail Mary to Noah Brown to take down the Bears. That got me real pumped up this past weekend. 5 Hour Energy knows that no matter what team you root for, being a fan requires heart, soul, and a whole lot of energy. Whether you're prepping for the big tailgate or ironing your jersey, your game day to-do list is always a mile long. That's why the limited edition Stan the Fan 5 Hour Energy Drink is here to help you fueled throughout the season. What's your fan fuel this week? Whatever it is, do it with 5 Hour Energy. Available on 5hourenergy.com, shipped nationwide. Vinny, I worry I have Zay Flowers ranked too high, and I think I have to fix this. I have him as my wide receiver 17. You have him at 19. I think I need to move him down by a decent chunk because he gets the Broncos this week. The Broncos are allowing the 3rd fewest points per game to wide receivers this season, and it's just like they're very, very stingy. They're allowing the fewest passing yards per attempt this year, the 3rd fewest, receiving yards to wide receivers. I'm a bit worried about this matchup for Zay Flowers.
Yeah, it's not the greatest matchup, but he is playing really well, and Lamar Jackson is locked into him, and he's a very good home player. So these are all things that are in his favor. Also, the Broncos, I mean, they faced a lot of very weak overall teams in offensively. So I think they're getting Flowers open. The Deontay Johnson acquisition is kind of interesting. I don't know if they're looking at it as maybe a longer-term replacement, right? If they don't bring back Nelson Aguilar or someone to have a little bit of depth there with Rashad Bateman and Flowers. Now, I think it is a little bit better matchup for the tight ends, where I think they'll be involved quite a bit. And you'll see some 12 personnel looks, but I'm not too worried about Flowers. I just can't expect him to have a big game. I can't rank him above where he is, like a middle range wide receiver 2. He's been operating more in terms of his catches and yardage as a wide receiver 1. So it is a significant drop for him, but I think he's too good. The quarterback is too good to let this happen. I do see this game, however, turning over to Lamar Jackson and Derrick Henry on the ground at some point. That's where the Broncos are still weakest here. So the question for Flowers, can he get it early in this game? Because I think there's a potential for the Ravens to get some momentum and put away the Broncos, who haven't seen a team of this caliber consistently all season.
That's my worry, right? Like I just screams Derrick Henry game. He also scored 1 touchdown on the season. That was all the way back in week 2. So it's not like you're getting the touchdown production. It's really reliant on the heavy target volume he's getting. And I just don't know if they're going to need him in this matchup. Now, a different matchup that we think could be a high-scoring affair, especially because the Colts have changed quarterbacks to Joe Flacco. We both really like Josh Downs this week against the Vikings. I have him wide receiver 20. You have him wide receiver 18. I think I might flip-flop Josh Downs and Zay Flowers at the very least here because the Vikings are just such a great matchup. And Joe Flacco's go-to guy has been Josh Downs. And his 2 starts, he targeted him 21 times. And in the half a game that he played against Pittsburgh, Josh Downs was still his go-to guy. Downs had the touchdown with Flacco. So it's been all good with Joe Flacco out there. And we know he's going to throw it up against the Vikings. So I really love Josh Downs this week.
Yeah, earlier you had Josh Downs hurt and he didn't get on the field. But once he's been on the field, Alec Pierce has kind of faded away, Michael Pittman. They're running Josh Downs all over the field, basically. And he's their entire passing game in a lot of situations because he's quick. He can get open underneath. He can speed by some guys and get open downfield. Really, it's been a disappointing season for this whole Colts passing game. And we didn't expect Downs to be on an island and just be making a lot of plays. But that's what's happened here. And that's why we like him a lot. Again, Michael Pittman is just a brutal, brutal year for him overall. And I think maybe there's some glimmer of hope for him with Joe Flacco, but he still don't feel confident playing him. And that Pierce stuff with Flacco, that's not going to happen. If that happens, it'll happen to Downs, who kind of made those plays with Anthony Richardson last week. So he should be very busy in this game. I think the Vikings can move the ball in the Colts. So I would expect Downs to easily clear double-digit targets in this game and be very productive.
Yeah, I agree with you. Now, Jalen Waddle, on the other hand, has really been terrible this year. He hasn't finished above wide receiver 39 since week 1. And, Tua comes back last week, still just 6 targets, 4 receptions, 45 yards. He's yet to get into the end zone this year. Gets a really tough matchup against that Bills secondary. They're very, very good at covering the outside. I hate this matchup for Waddle. So would you rather go with Waddle or Calvin Ridley, who finally had a good game in week 8? Do you trust him to keep doing that? And he gets the Patriots. If you have to go with Waddle or Ridley, who are you going with?
Yeah, I think I'm going to go with Ridley. I mean, the Patriots are vulnerable. I mean, in the secondary, they might be trading their corner soon, Jonathan Jones. He's their best asset to trade. So if he's gone, I mean, he's actually not played all that well. And this entire secondary has not played all that well. And I think the DeAndre Hopkins trade really helped Calvin Ridley. He could be the target hog here. We'll see about Mason Rudolph versus Will Levis. But I think Ridley is still going to be the guy that they're going to feature. I think he finally got his wish to be the number 1 and being treated that way with the targets, especially in the first quarter against the Lions. He had a fantasy day in the first quarter. So I think they'll build on that momentum. This is also could be a game where the Titans have a chance to win, right? So maybe they can get him in the end zone against this matchup. So yeah, with the other thing with Jalen Waddle, and I had Tyreek Hill lower as well. I'm worried about the front end of this as much as I'm worried about the back end. Tua just does not have a good history against the Bills. And I think Waddle, I don't know, he might be one of those guys like Patrick Mahomes where we're just ranking high each week thinking he's Waddle. But when you dive deep into it, the production really isn't there. So this is more of a hope, right? Can he produce as a wide receiver 2 behind Tyreek Hill? This should happen. But I don't know. The Dolphins team just has been way out of sync here. That we saw last year, we knew Tyreek was going to go off. Jalen Waddle was going to have a decent game. But this year, nothing is kind of guaranteed with these receivers.
And Achane has really been the second target in this offense when Tua's out there and not Waddle. So Achane love this week. Waddle not so much. Tyreek Hill is still Tyreek Hill. So it's hard to bump him down too much. Now we have 2 wide receivers who didn't do much last week with their new team. Amari Cooper did pretty much nothing with the Bills, but maybe this week, do you think he'll get going more against the Dolphins? And then you got DeAndre Hopkins coming into his second game with the Chiefs. He barely played, right? He played 30% of snaps. It was his first game with the Chiefs. Andy Reid came out and said he expects him to play a lot more this week. And he has an amazing matchup against the Buccaneers. I'm kind of getting hot on DeAndre Hopkins this week. I would prefer him over Amari Cooper in terms of who I think has a higher ceiling going into this weekend.
Yeah, I'm much lower on these guys than you are. I have them actually back-to-back at 38, 39, so on the border of wide receiver 3s. Well, you have them pretty high here. DeAndre Hopkins, one of the last 2 wide receiver 2s, and then going down even Amari Cooper, not far behind at 26. So you're a little bit higher on them. I think what's happening with Amari Cooper, I'm not sure I'm trusting him at this point because, again, you have Keon Coleman, Khalil Shakir have kind of started to play well. And again, Shakir is the guy in the slot, so that helps him against Cade or Kuhu. I don't know if Cooper's a guy necessarily if he can outrun Jalen Ramsey if he sees that matchup. I know Ramsey's slowed down, but Cooper's older as well. So I'm not sure. I think he's more of a facilitator for those other guys. I mean, it's not a coincidence that since they got Cooper, Coleman and Shakir and Kincaid have all been pretty good here. So Hopkins, however, I could see them greasing him a little bit. And I might have to reevaluate that myself, where I might look at him in DFS, right? If I could play that game on the solo game on Monday night, where I think they want to give him an opportunity to score. But I don't know. The Chiefs could also be in a situation where we see a Travis Kelce, Kareem Hunt, Xavier Worthy type game and don't need Hopkins more than a few routes. So I do like the concepts of Cooper and Hopkins more than I think what you'll see in their execution. That's why I'm a little lower.
Let's talk about their teammates here. Keon Coleman against the Dolphins or Xavier Worthy against the Buccaneers. Who would you rather play among those two? Because Xavier Worthy caught the touchdown. He's still not heavily involved. 8 targets, though. He's had 8 targets each of the last 2 weeks, just turned into 19 receiving yards and 37 receiving yards. Keon Coleman has been the wide receiver 13, wide receiver 12 over the last 2 weeks. Or would you rather surpass both of those guys and go with Cedric Tillman, who's been on fire since taking over as a starting job with the Browns?
Yeah, I think I would actually lean here pretty easily. I think I go Xavier Worthy and Keon Coleman back to back here because, again, Worthy is still going to be able to stretch the field for big plays. The Buccaneers can't allow that. And I think they're using this opportunity, right, to see what Worthy has as a top wide receiver with now the back-to-back injuries there to Rashee Rice and Juju Smith-Schuster. I think they want to unlock more of Xavier Worthy's potential with his speed. So I think he's in a great position to produce. Keon Coleman has just looked good. And again, the Dolphins, talk about a guy that could actually outrun those older Dolphins corners. He's a guy that can do it a little bit more for me than Cooper. So I love Keon Coleman. Now, I'm not as hot on Cedric Tillman. And here's why. I think this Chargers secondary is really good, right? They have ability to shut down a lot of players. And they actually have Christian Fulton. Remember him? He was a high draft pick for the Titans, and he's actually balling out here in coverage for them on the outside. So Chargers defense is just nasty against the pass. I mean, I know Chris Olave had a little bit of breakthrough against them last week, but that was more volume-based. I mean, Tillman could come through with volume, but in terms of the particular matchup, I'm not a big fan of it this week.
See, I don't know if they're so nasty because you just brought up, I forgot what team we were talking about, and you said they faced like nobody, right? Oh, when we're talking about the Broncos. The Chargers have faced the Raiders, the Panthers, the Steelers before Russ, the Chiefs, they just don't throw, right, if they don't have to, the Broncos, the Cardinals, and the Saints. So it's like, they really haven't faced anybody. They allowed Calvin Austin to put up 95 yards and a touchdown. Xavier Worthy, 73 yards and a touchdown. Troy Franklin and Cortland Sutton both scored a touchdown against them. And then, like you brought up, Chris Olave had 107 yards on 8 receptions last week. So I'm actually really not too scared of Cedric Tillman. I think he's playable. I do like Keon Coleman more than him just because of the volume he's getting and, how good he's looking. But then I would rank it Keon Coleman, Cedric Tillman, and then Xavier Worthy in that order. We need to move on to our tight end rankings. There's some tough ones this week. You're trusting Sam LaPorta to finally come through with a real big game. I can't wait to hear about that. We'll dig into our tight end rankings right after a quick break.
This episode of Locked On Fantasy Football is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook, America's #1 sportsbook. Okay, baseball wrapped up last night. The Dodgers won 4-1 over the Yankees in the World Series. You got the NBA in full swing, but don't forget the second half of this NFL season is going to be fantastic. And whatever action you're looking for, NFL or otherwise, get ready to tackle it all with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because right now new customers can bet $5, get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL, any sport you want, all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of a game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. So convenient to get in on the action. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's only at FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL.
Listen up, renters. Ever feel like you're stuck in this loop of rent payments, just watching your money vanish into thin air? It's time to turn that rent game around and start earning some serious rewards. That's where Built Rewards comes in. Built is breaking ground as a neighborhood rewards program that hooks you up with points on your rent. Every month, pay your rent and watch the Built points roll in. Use points to jet off on a dream vacation. Put your points toward a flight or a hotel stay with 500 plus airlines and 700,000 plus hotels and properties. You can also use your points to book fitness studio classes, redeem them toward a future rent payment. They're designed to meet your lifestyle. Pay rent hassle free through the Built Rewards app. Your rent game just got a major upgrade. Built Points has been consistently ranked the highest value point currency by the Point Guys and Bankrate. Earn points by paying rent right now when you go to joinbuilt.com/lockedonnfl. That's joinbilt.com/lockedonnfl. Make sure to use our URL so they know we sent you. Joinbuilt.com/lockedonnfl to start earning points with your rent payments today. Every single week, you're throwing in Brock Bowers, Travis Kelce, Trey McBride, Kyle Pitts, not thinking a second about it, right? And too good, too consistent, have too much upside. Did I say Trey McBride? I think I did. He's in
Yes.
there. Now, on the other hand, Sam LaPorta has been a headache, right? And he did actually come through with a good fantasy day finally last week with 6 receptions, 48 yards, and a touchdown. And now 48 yards was great for last week because what I think Jared Goff threw for like 80 yards. So that's really impressive. Now he did get the touchdown from David Montgomery, who threw it to him. Why do you think Sam LaPorta is such a good tight end this week? Because you have him as your tight end 3 against the Packers.
Yeah, the matchup is great, I think. I mean, the Packers are pretty vulnerable in the middle of the field. They're actually okay at corner. So I think you'll see that old school approach with Jared Goff through the middle, Amon-Ra St. Brown and Sam LaPorta. We've seen Jameson Williams is still not an option. I think that's definitely related to LaPorta having better value, right? We're not having that big play deep threat here for the Lions. So, and look, they're still throwing to their tight ends a lot. Brock Wright scored last week. So Sam LaPorta is still the centerpiece of their offense. I think even more so this particular week in this particular matchup, it's a bigger game. So, and look, I mean, you talk about those every week plays. I think he is trying to get back into our minds as one of those. But yeah, I think this says that he'll get open a lot against the Packers, and it'll be that type of game because, again, the Packers will bring some heat on Jared Goff. So I don't think it's going to be to sit back there and do whatever he wants like it's been in several games this season.
It's so hard with Sam LaPorta because they do have the other weapons, because they can just run so much with David Montgomery and Jahmyr Gibbs, or use Amon-Ra St. Brown, or apparently Khalif Raymond can just like bring back every punt return for 80 yards and then also get the touchdown. It's just been hard to trust Sam LaPorta. I have him in a couple leagues. I'm going to trust him this week in what should be a high scoring matchup. So I'm with you. I have him as my tight end 8. I'm not as bold on him as you, but that's okay. We are both agreeing with Cade Otton this week.
Yeah.
Like he's getting the targets without Mike Evans and Chris Godwin there. Like you have him at 4, I am at 6. Good matchup against the Chiefs. Go for it. A little bit different on Evan Ingram. I have him all the way at 4. You have him at 7, so not completely different. But I love Evan Ingram without Christian Kirk. That's just that simple. Like last year, weeks 13 through 18, Christian Kirk goes down, and Evan Ingram averages over 10 targets per game, averages 19 fantasy points per game in full PPR. He was the tight end 1 during that span. And, last week when Christian Kirk goes down, Evan Ingram scores a touchdown. Like it's just, they play a very similar role in this offense because they're both their slot guys. So when one goes down, the other one excels. Evan Ingram's going to be a great play moving forward.
Yeah. On one hand, the Eagles have been actually good at covering the tight end. On the other hand, there's going to be a lot of volume and there's some wide receiver injuries that he has to navigate through. Trevor Lawrence, and they could be down to the point where they'll give them all those throws in the second half. So there could be a lot of like garbage type plays in the middle of the field as they protect against the deep ball if Brian Thomas Jr. / Gabe Davis, either one can go. They'll be trying to take away that so the Jaguars can't get back in the game. So that should leave a lot in the middle field. So it was tough because, again, I have Kelsey, Bowers, LaPorta, Otton, McBride, and Pitts. Those are the guys ahead of him. So you have him in a fair spot. I mean, I could easily like him over Pitts and Otton too. It's just going to be so tight with these guys. And sometimes, again, it comes down to the touchdown. Ingram is not necessarily the most reliable touchdown scorer among these tight ends. So really, again, these are all plays to me that you have to put into your lineups this week. And again, the tight end spots are becoming a lot better all of a sudden this season, where now there's enough reliable tight ends for a 12-team league.
Yeah, David Njoku is another one of those reliable tight ends. He's going to get the volume. He's going to get opportunities around the end zone. So even against the Chargers, I'm still rolling in David Njoku this week. He's my tight end 7. You're 10. But I want to talk about Cole Kmet because he's been a really hard one to figure out. He's had 2 monster weeks where he's finished as a tight end 2 and a tight end 1 in week 3 and week 6 with over 20 fantasy points. But then all the rest of the weeks are pretty much duds. And last week he comes down with 1 reception, 14 yards on 1 target. Will he bounce back against the Cardinals this week?
It's so strange. This Bears offense is really strange. And they're very good at home. They're not very good on the road. So that's the question. And then there's some weird things that happen, right? DJ Moore disappears for a week, or Keenan Allen's not involved. Or they seem to like struggle to get all their weapons involved here for Caleb Williams in a given week. And they also seem content, if they can do it, that they'll run DeAndre Swift, and that limits the targets and volume for Caleb Williams to get the ball to all these guys. Now, the Cardinals used to be very vulnerable at tight end. They've been pretty decent against that position all season long now. So I don't know. This looks to me as a game that DeAndre Swift will go off. I think DJ Moore rebounds. They'll probably want to grease him as the squeaky wheel from last week a little bit more. Keenan Allen, I think, also hurts the value of Cole Kmet. That's what we thought before the season. Kmet was also taking advantage when Allen was banged up and not playing. But now Allen seems to be feeling it in the middle of the field more. So it's interesting. You talked about the dynamic. If Kirk's out, Ingram produces. When Allen's out, Ingram, or you see Kmet produce. But when both of them are on the field, he's got to pick someone in the middle, and Allen usually is going to win that battle.
We both have Kmet ranked pretty low this week. I have him at 14. You have him at 15. So we're both fading him. Let's rank these 3 tight ends here because Jake Ferguson is all of a sudden, I don't know if he's just an every week must play. The last 2 weeks, tight end 8, or last 2 games he's played, it's been tight end 28 and tight end 28. He started off pretty hot with, tight end 3, tight end 9, tight end 10 from weeks 3 through 6, but just hasn't been as good as of late. So are you trusting him this week against the Falcons, or would you rather go with Tucker Kraft against the Lions, or maybe TJ Hawkinson in his first game back against the Colts if he does play for the Vikings?
Yeah, I kind of like all these guys this week. I have Hawkinson at 12 and Kraft at 13, but I really do like Jake Ferguson this week. Now, you look at the Falcons, and you think they'd be better at covering the tight end, but they've had some safety issues, injury issues with Justin Simmons. So, and they don't usually always cover in that way, right? They use the linebacker. So when you look at this matchup, I think the Cowboys are going to have a lot of success throwing on the Falcons. They cannot rush the passer. They have some weakness all over in coverage on the back end here. So what you're looking at is high volume, which is good. I think the Cowboys won't be able to run it all on the Falcons. So a lot of passes going. I think CeeDee Lamb, after his monster game last week, probably going to get double teamed and just followed all over the field. That should open quite a bit of the field for Ferguson this week. So I really like Ferguson. I really like Dak. And Dak, if I'm going to like him in the top 10, Ferg has got to have a big game, and I think it happens here in Atlanta.
That's fair. I do think this could be a bigger game from him. He still got 8 targets last week. It just turned into 23 yards on 6 receptions. So he's still getting the target volume. I think you can still trust him. With Tucker Kraft, I trust him a lot more if Jordan Love's out there than with Malik Willis. And then TJ Hawkinson, I mean, you're just taking a shot that he's actually going to play a lot of snaps, right? Yeah. But they have been holding him out. Like over the last 2 weeks, it seemed like he was there and maybe he was going to play. They've been really safe with him. So I'm wondering once he gets back, if actually he'll play a decent amount of snaps right away. But it's going to be hard to trust him. One last guy, Zach Ertz, I think is a good play against the Giants. He's getting the targets. He's getting the work. He's been really like a good weapon for Jaden Daniels as of late.
Yeah, the Giants by the numbers are not bad against the tight end either. I don't know if the Giants are going to be just run all over in this game, and that's my concern. And that's the thing is, can you get the volume here? And they've actually been better in certain situations, but as you mentioned last week, and it really came to fruition, they struggle with the running game and play action deep balls off that. So that should play into the hands of what they want to do with Brian Robinson Jr. and all their backs and Terry McLaurin getting the ball from Jane Daniels. So I don't know if they're going to need Zach Ertz as much in this game as they've needed in some tougher matchups of late.
Yeah, I think that's fair, for sure. For Zach Ertz, he's a low, like high floor, low ceiling type of play if you're in a desperate need this week. That is it for today's episode. That's it for our week 9 rankings. Tomorrow, we're going to get into our sleepers and our favorite DFS plays of the week. I want to thank you all for making Locked On Fantasy Football your first listen every day. Hit that subscribe button on YouTube and give us a review on wherever you're listening to this podcast. We will talk to you tomorrow. Bye, y'all.